Yes.
So you've just looked at your workaway profile briefly and your CV.
Correct.
2 documents you made yourself. So tell me the main difference between those 2 documents.
The main difference between the 2 documents, in my opinion, beginning with the CV, is that it's a professional document. So I'm looking to be hired, I'm going to be getting paid for my work, and I'm trying to sell myself to my employer and highlight my qualities of how I can be beneficial and be paid for that. So as a volunteer on my workaway profile, it's more life experience that I've gained, assets that I can give and create a comfortable and fun environment for them. It's more light-hearted, I guess, and the work is typically not paid. If it is, very little, just for helping out. So I'm not so much targeting my professional skills as much as I am how I can help in different ways, even if it's a little bit outside of my initial training.
Okay, so we're going to refer to the negative experience that you had on workaway.
Mm-hmm.
So when you first applied for that, you just reminded yourself of the profile. What attracted you to that particular profile and made you choose it?
So going through profiles, I was hoping to stay somewhere within a certain distance of the city, because Norway is very expensive for traveling. So the trains can become quite costly, and some parts of the country you even have to take a plane to. So I was hoping somewhere at least around the city of Oslo or Bergen. This one was in a close enough area to where it was attractive enough for me and had an interesting project. So the topic was the main point of interest for me. It was working with aqua-phonics and some light gardening, and that was what was highlighted in his profile and posted. So he was also local Norwegian. I was looking to get a feel of the local culture. He grew up there his whole life, so it was attractive enough for me to message him.
Okay, so the fact he was a local, being grown up there his whole life, that was important.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to a different country just to see somebody who's also from Hawaii.
Okay, and what were the problems with working there? What happened?
Initially, people can be a bit quirky. You get a positive or negative first impression. He was nice enough. He also had a girlfriend, not a wife. They had been life partners, living in Goa in India for 10 or more years. So you could kind of see and deduct some small details that indicated drug use from them. So they weren't quite all there when they were speaking to you, and people can be nice enough and still be trying to rehabilitate themselves from their past life experience. So at first we just kind of shake it off and see where it goes. There was nothing threatening at first, but as it went on, we stayed there a total of 2 days and then left the third morning. So that was an initial kind of impression of them.
So in their profile, there's no negative feedback, and you never left any negative feedback. Can you just explain that situation?
Yes, there was no negative feedback at all. They'd only had three reviews before us. Since they were positive and very good, we thought, okay, we'll give it a go. So we went there, and there was one other workaway there at the same time as us. He had already been there for about 5 or 7 days. It was a man from India who worked with IT and tech and was improving the web page for their side business, which was selling Japanese koi. So we didn't actually work with the koi, and it was advertised in the profile just to come and work with the gardening and aquaponics. So that's what we thought we were going to be doing. And he was working directly improving their website. But as soon as we got there, he had some look on his face that we might not be comfortable. He seemed normal enough. I mean, he was friendly, but even as the day progressed, we could see that he was a bit uncomfortable there. It looked like he really didn't want to be there. And so this was a first red flag for us, aside from the kind of quirky, drugged out personality of the hosts.
You never left feedback, right?
Never, no. Our point of leaving the feedback was they never actually did anything to us that we considered we would leave a negative review with 0 stars. And because of this, and us only staying 2 days, it was not, in our minds anyway, important, because for us it just wasn't comfortable and it wasn't what we were expecting from them. But at the same time, they did provide us food. They didn't threaten us. It was just extremely uncomfortable. So I can say they were quite, I guess, aggressive towards the other workaway that was staying, working on their website. It was more the wife, the not husband, the boyfriend, the man who owned the house was quite easygoing. Just seemed kind of like he was high all the time on something. But she would scream at the other workawayer, and I mean loudly, so we could hear from the other end of the house. And by the second morning, she wasn't speaking to anybody, even her own boyfriend, the owner of the house, her life partner, and just turned her back when anyone tried to speak with her, even at dinner, everything. So, yeah.
Okay. So, lastly, what is your difference in expectations when you're working for a for-profit business or an NGO type thing on Workaway?
So more charity-based.
Or Workaway generally, just paid and unpaid. Your expectations, your difference in expectation is what?
Well, you have to realize when you're going into anything in life, specifically something that's volunteering, you have to be flexible. There's going to be times when things are changing and you can't always say, okay, we worked 10 minutes over, we need to be compensated for this, because some days you can work 10 minutes under. It's not always like that. If you're being overworked, then yeah, it's clear that you need to say something probably if you're not comfortable with it. So our expectation in going there was that the profile indicated what we would be doing, that we'd be working with gardening and aqua-phonics, but when we got there, it was not the case. He had us doing manual labor, working with electricity, while trying. We weren't experienced in electric circuit work, so it was kind of odd. We didn't feel comfortable doing it, and also having us do hole digging in the yard for some reason. He was trying to build something. He didn't really explain the point of the project to us. He just had us moving rocks and digging holes with shovels, and it was raining and quite cold out. And
so you think that as a volunteer you need to be more flexible?
No. You should be more flexible than if you're getting hired for a job, maybe, that's going to pay, because you have certain expectations when you're getting hired for pay, and they say, okay, sometimes this can happen and this can happen, but we'll still pay you this, or we'll compensate if you have to.
But then you're saying then you should be more flexible if you're being paid, because you're being given money.
I'm saying it all depends on the prior agreement, whether you're volunteering or whether you're getting paid.
Oh, I see. So if you're being paid, there's a specific contractual agreement type thing.
Yes, and typically before you begin the job, you're going to go over everything and then sign the contract with your employer, correct? So at that time, that's when you ask your questions. If you forget to ask something that's stated in the contract, it's not their fault, your employer, because they have stated.
Oh, I see. So if there was a problem, then you could just leave. When there was a problem, you were flexible to the point there was a problem, but you could leave.
For the volunteer?
Which with a job you can't do, right? Is that?
Well, you can leave in a job, of course, but it's with a contract, so that there can be some penalties. But when you're a volunteer, if it's not what was preordained, such as in this workaway, when they didn't state anywhere on their profile that we'd be doing manual labor, or that we would not have our own room, being a couple, because actually on the profile it did say we would have our own room, which just turned out to be a pull-out bed in the living room. And then again, the man was in there just playing techno music quite loudly and playing with his smelly dog until 1 a.m. It was just quite uncomfortable, since we were promised our own room and weren't aware that we were going to be doing labor. So we found another place the following day, and then left on the third morning, and just told him what we thought wasn't okay about it. And he said, okay, he kind of wants practical people who will do whatever he wants anyway. So then we were off, and it wasn't a screaming match or something. It was just, we were both calm about it, but he understood that we weren't really okay with him taking advantage of workers, and he wanted people who might be a little bit more desperate and needed to stay, and that wasn't us. So
Okay.
yeah.
So basically, you need to be more flexible on work away, but you ask questions afterwards because it's not long-term commitment. You just leave when there's an issue. Then.
I would say when you get there, you need to establish ground rules, maybe even before you get there online. But there are some things that when they're showing you what to do and what they expect from you that maybe they can't explain online so easily. So when you get there, I'd say the best thing to do is lay out all of the expectations and ground rules and determined stay.
Right, so it's important then to actually have enough money to move on. If you were like a real shoestring and you had to stay, that would be a problem, right?
To be honest, we probably would have wild camped, since that's quite common in Norway, rather than had stayed with him. And it was the end of March, so it was quite cold. So yeah, it was a situation, I mean, again, not to mention that we were made drinks that were spiked with marijuana. That's not okay with us, because we both had jobs that required drug testing. As teachers, they required drug testing occasionally, randomly, and working on a boat, which was my job at the time. So yeah, it's not okay to drug your volunteers and then tell them after they're drinking half of their drink. So
okay, well that's 12 minutes. So I think that will be enough to transcribe. So
yeah, sure.
We'll call it a day there.
All right,
you.
thanks.
Brilliant. Why do people neglect to report negative experiences or even report them as positive, especially in the sharing economy? What you've just watched formed a part of my first year master's research, which aimed to answer that question by looking at the feedback that was left, together with the transcripts of 6 interviews, and analysing them in the light of the linguistic theories of politeness and genre. It goes on to conclude with some positive suggestions about how to improve the situation for all participants. It's a short piece of research of around 4,000 words, but also includes 6 interview transcripts and copied feedback and online profiles from the internet in the extensive appendices. Find it on Amazon, Sharing the Silence by J.A. Starr. To end on a positive note, my own experiences in the sharing economy and most experiences of most people is overwhelmingly positive. The reason for the negative focus on the rare problems here is merely to illustrate the linguistic theories I was studying. Happy sharing.